Aloha and welcome to the applicant webinar for the Native Hawaiian Library Services Grant Program. My name is Jennifer Himmelreich, and I'm the Program Officer for this grant program. In this webinar, I'll be providing information about the Native Hawaiian Library Services Grant Program. We will review eligibility, go over the application process, the different application components, and also offer you a few tips and suggestions. Our goal is to help make the application process as easy as possible while helping to ensure that all application requirements are met. The Native American Library Services grants are competitive awards for up to 2 years and up to $150,000. Cost share is not required. The anticipated period of performance for these awards is September 1st, 2024, and to end by August 31st, 2026. To be eligible for this program, you must be a nonprofit organization that primarily serves and represents Native Hawaiians. The term Native Hawaiian refers to an individual who is a citizen of the United States and a descendant of the Aboriginal people who, before 1778, occupied and exercised sovereignty in the area that is now Hawaii. If you are an ineligible institution, we can encourage you to partner with an eligible institution on a project. While you cannot be the lead applicant, you may apply through a partnership with an eligible institution and receive funding to support activities in that manner. Please note that a grantee with an active Native Hawaiian Library Services grant may not apply for another Native Hawaiian Library Services grant that would have an overlapping period of performance with the active grant. The Native Hawaiian Library Services grants have 3 main goals with objectives that correspond to each goal. The first corresponds to the Digital Services Project category on the program information form, and they are to improve digital services to support needs for education, workforce development, economic and business development, health information, critical thinking, and digital literacy skills. Objective 1.1 supports the establishment and refinement of digital infrastructure, platforms, and technology. Objective 1.2 supports preservation and access to information and resources through digitization. The second goal and objective correspond to the Educational Programming Project category, and they are to improve educational programs related to specific topics and content areas of interest to library patrons and community-based users. Objective 2.1 supports the identification of the needs and interests of learners. Objective 2.2 supports the development and implementation of classes, events, teaching tools, resources, and other educational services. And Objective 2.3 supports the evaluative assessment of library-based approaches to teaching and facilitation. The third goal and objectives corresponds to the Preservation or Revitalization Project category on the program information form, and they are to enhance the preservation and revitalization of Native Hawaiian culture and language. Objective 3.1 supports the development of efficient strategic partnerships within, across, and outside Native Hawaiian communities. Objective 3.2 supports the preservation of content of unique and specific value to Native Hawaiian communities. And Objective 3.3 supports the sharing of content within and or beyond Native Hawaiian communities. You can find the Notice of Funding opportunity on our website. We ask applicants to read the NOFO carefully and follow all links for the application. Pages 6 and 7 in the NOFO include a table that lists all of the application components, what kind of format they need to be submitted as, and which file name to use when you're submitting your application package. Use this list as a checklist of all documents you'll need to submit by April 1st. You want to make sure your application is complete so it is not rejected simply because you missed or forgot one document. Let's go over a timeline and how this process works. Mark April 1st, 2024 at 11:59 p.m. as the deadline. Make note that the time zone listed is for the Eastern time zone. Once applications are received, grant proposals go through application checks to make sure all application components are there before they go out for peer review in May and June. Reviewers will read your proposals and evaluate them to make sure you have responded to the NOFO and that your proposed project has potential for success. After the peer reviews in June and July, we complete budget checks and present the reviewers' comments and scores to the IMLS director, who will then make final funding decisions based on reviewers' evaluations and the overall goals of the program and agency. Announcements will be made in August for September's first start date. Please note that during the application review time in April and the budget reviews in June, noted with the purple stars in the timeline, are the periods our staff may reach out to grant contacts with questions about application components or questions about the budget form justification or indirect costs. If you need to get a better idea of how to align your project with the 3 IMLS goal categories, you can search previous awardees using our awarded grants search database. Starting on the IMLS homepage, click on Grants at the top of the page, then click on Search Awarded Grants. From here, you can select a fiscal year. We've chosen FY22, and you'll want to pull the Native American Library Services grant program under Programs, then hit Submit, which will pull up all FY22 Native Hawaiian awardees. Under the description, there's a PDF document you can download, which will include the proposal narrative and schedule of completion for each funded project. I will now review the questions that you should address in your proposal. As part of the IMLS supplementary information form, you'll include an abstract. Here are some key questions to address in the abstract. First, you'll identify the lead applicant and, if applicable, any collaborators. You'll describe the need, problem, or challenge your project will address. You'll want to list the high-level activities you'll carry out and identify the associated timeframes. You'll specify and identify who or what will benefit from your project. And you'll specify your project's intended results. You'll describe how you'll measure performance in achieving your intended results. Please note that if your proposed project is selected for funding, your abstract may be published online. As such, it must not include any sensitive or confidential information. Your application narrative should have 3 main sections: a budget justification, a project work plan, and project results. In your project justification, please tell reviewers which program goal and associated objectives of the Native Hawaiian Library Services grant program will your project address. Describe in detail what need, problem, or challenge your project will address and how it was identified. You can use demographic information, economic circumstances, condition assessments, and/or other relevant data from reliable sources to help define the need, problem, or challenge and develop the scope for the project. You'll want to identify who the target group for your project and how they've been involved in the planning. Target group refers to those who will be most immediately and positively affected by your project. Be specific by identifying particular age groups, community members with particular needs, and/or other types of target audiences. Identify the number of individuals in the target group, in each target group, if you identify more than one. You'll want to share who the ultimate beneficiaries for this project are. Beneficiaries refer to those who are likely to be aided in the long term by your project. They may or may not be the same group as your target group. You'll want to identify the number of individuals who will benefit from your project in the long term if reliable and justifiable reasons are possible. Otherwise, describe the characteristics of the beneficiaries you expect to be served eventually by your project. The second part of your application, your project work plan, should address the following questions. What specific activities will you carry out and in what sequence? What are the risks to the project and how will you mitigate them? Who will plan, implement, and manage your projects? What time, financial, personnel, and other resources will you need to carry out the activities? Identify any partner or collaborator organizations that will contribute to your project and describe their roles. How and with whom will you share your work's general findings and lessons learned? What data will you collect? How often? And from what sources in order to measure your performance in terms of effectiveness, quality, and timeliness? I will discuss more about this in a minute. Does your project include any digital content, resources, assets, software, data sets? If so, be sure to create a digital products plan. Examples of digital products include any data visualizations that are informing the project's work, online materials such as web pages, and digital content products or images. For the third narrative component, project results, it needs to include what your project's intended results are and how they will address the need, problem, or challenge you have identified in the project justification above. How will the knowledge, skills, behaviors, and or attitudes of the intended audience change as a result of your project? What tangible products will result from your project? How will you sustain the benefits of your project? How will you continue to support the project, its results, and or new models that are created beyond the grant period? For example, will there be ongoing institutional and or community supportive project activities or products? Do you have demonstrated buy-in from potential stakeholders? What are your plans for sustaining any digitized collections, software, and supporting documentation, information system, and other technology tools? The Native Hawaiian Library Services Grant Program will use the following 3 performance measures as a basis for understanding the level of performance by the grant program as a whole and by each award supported through it. For effectiveness, are the activities being supported by the program contribute to A, improving digital services, B, improving educational programs, and or C, enhancing the preservation and revitalization of Native Hawaiian cultures and languages? For quality, is the program meeting user requirements and expectations? And for timeliness, is each activity being completed on time and as proposed? Each applicant must identify what data they will collect, how often, and from what source in order to produce these measurements. Consider using the sample performance measurement plan referenced in the NOFO to get started. I will now address key components of your application package. You'll want to include the application components listed on the NOFO and included here on this slide. Conditionally required documents include your proof of private nonprofit status, your federally negotiated indirect cost rate, if you plan to include that in your budget, and the digital products plan, if you're proposing to generate any digital content, resources, assets, or software. You'll need to include an IMLS budget form and budget justification following the standard budget categories listed on this slide. Please note that the IMLS budget form is used for all IMLS grant programs and includes areas you may not fill in as part of this grant program. The budget justification, which accompanies the completed IMLS budget form, should explain in detail the purpose and cost breakdown for each expense listed in these categories. Note that under the travel category, it should include $3,000 per year for IMLS-directed travel. Also, please note that cost share is not required as part of this program. You may submit a reasonable number of supporting documents that supplement your narrative and support the project description. Supporting documents should help IMLS staff and reviewers envision your project in greater detail, but they should not be used to introduce new topics, nor to continue answers to the narrative questions. Give each document a clear descriptive title at the top of the first page. You can choose to include any of the supporting documents listed on this slide. Final tips. Make sure to submit a complete application with all required documents. Don't forget any key personnel listed must have resumes. You want to include any conditionally required documents as needed. If you're using a federally negotiated indirect cost rate agreement, remember that the cost rate agreement must extend through September 2024. Please note that the indirect cost rate at the time of the award stands until the end of the grant award. So if a new rate is negotiated, we cannot amend to the new rate. Finally, supporting documents might include needs assessments, letter of supports, plans, or reports. Next, we'll provide some tips on how to help with the application process. First, register early. The UEI, SAM.gov, and grants.gov registrations are sequential. The UEI has replaced DUNS and is generated when you register with SAM.gov. You must have an active SAM.gov registration to register with grants.gov, and you will need a functional grants.gov registration to submit a Native Hawaiian grant application to IMLS. Remember that your SAM.gov registration expires each year and you must renew it. You can log on to SAM.gov at any time to find out your status, and I would recommend doing that today. Here are a few application tips based on experience. Get some feedback and revise. Ask 2 or 3 people who are not involved in the grant to read the proposal and provide feedback on ideas, structure, and grammar spelling. Consider their feedback and revise accordingly. Proofread final versions carefully and use spell check feature. And coordinate with your team to submit all application components through grants.gov before the deadline. Start today organizing what you need to apply and understanding who in your organization can help confirm UEI, SAM, and grants.gov registrations. Remember to save all your documents as PDF files. Grants.gov cannot convert them for you, so that's an important note. Upload application files to grants.gov prior to the deadline. I would encourage setting a date in case something unforeseen comes up requiring more time. Utilize the grants.gov workspace. It's a great way to organize the work of the application process in one work environment and with any work partners who have a role to play in application prep and submission process. Be sure to double check the uploaded files against the table of application components in the Notice of Funding Opportunity. Finally, by starting early, it allows you time to resubmit the application before the deadline if you need to do so. So keep that in mind. This might be helpful if you discover you forgot something or would like to add additional information. For questions about eligibility, your library services plan and project activities, the digital products plan, your budget, including allowability of costs, please reach out to myself, Jennifer Himmelreich. For questions about application requirements and deadline, please reach out to my colleague, Sheena Afakwa. Our contact information is on this slide. Mahalo for listening in, and we look forward to receiving your application. As always, best wishes from IMLS.